Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Brier, Grieves Insurance. Protecting your assets starts with a company that you can count on. So whether it's auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance, there's nobody better in the business to work with than the great people over at Brier, Grieves Insurance. For more information about them, visit their website at briergrievesinsurance.com or give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166 and see how Brier Grieves Insurance can help you. It is a Thursday edition of the Pewter Report podcast. A lot to get into on today's show. A monthly award went out to a superstar on this team. Talk about the ebbs and flows of the Bucs offense, some special teams discussion, and of course, all of the injuries going on with this team. So today's title is How Do Banged Up Bucs Stay Competitive Against a Very, Very Tough Seattle Seahawks team where the Bucs have to go out west and play against on this Sunday. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my Thursday co-host and colleague from PewterReport.com, Adam Slavon. Adam, how are we doing?
Matt, we're doing great, man. Really excited to be on today's show with you and getting to interact with all the Pewter people. Today was a great day at the facility, and we really got so much insight from each level of the team, from the offense, defense, special teams. You mentioned McGahee, the news about Emeka Egbuka today, and Josh Grizzard kind of talking about the passing game and really the offense. I mean, there's so many layers of this team to really get into before Sunday's matchup.
Yeah, let's start with the man on the screen right there, Bucs rookie wide receiver Emeka Egbuka. It has been announced earlier today, that Emeka Egbuka has won NFL Offensive Rookie of the Month for all of his contributions through the first 4 games of the season. It's been a spectacle watching him produce for this team. And it's so funny thinking about how there was people against this pick when Jason Light in the front office took him in the first round for Tampa Bay and how important he has been to this team. Just some stats for everybody. He has compiled 18 receptions for 282 yards and 4 touchdowns. He started the season with a bang, scoring 2 touchdowns, including the game winner with 59 seconds to go. He had a studly one-handed catch in week 3 against the Jets with Sauce Gardner covering him. And then last week, even though it was a loss for the Bucs, he did have his first 100-yard receiving game. He's tied for the rookie lead in total touchdowns with 4. And among rookie wide receivers, he is ranked first in yards from scrimmage with 291, yards after catch with 115, and he's tied for the most receptions as well with 18. He's only 2 touchdowns behind the NFL league lead, which is held by Amon-Ra St. Brown. So a well-deserved award for Emeka Egbuka. And, man, what a guy he's turned out to be for this team.
And you said it best, Matt, a superstar. Only 4 games into his career, and Emeka Egbuka is him. I mean, you mentioned his numbers. If you put it across the full season, you're looking at someone who would have about 75 catches, 1,100 yards, 16, 17 touchdowns. Like, you'll take that. And honestly, like, going into the season, you had so many varying expectations of what Egbuka would do, because Mike, Chris, Jalen McMillan, but without each of those wide receivers, you wonder where the team would be without Emeka Egbuka. And it's also fair to wonder, how far off is he realistically from doing what he's done in the first 4 games for the rest of the season? Because even though Chris will recover and get more up to speed, Mike will come back in a few games, you'll have McMillan, but Emeka's still going to be a vital part of this offense. And I think that was properly recognized today by him winning NFC Offensive Rookie of the Month.
Yeah, I don't see how you take him off the field even when Chris Godwin regains his form. And I have a feeling we'll see vintage Chris Godwin Jr. This upcoming game against the Seattle Seahawks. And yes, when Mike Evans returns and when Jalen McMillan comes to stuff. Because let's remember, there was talks about what are you going to do with all of these great players when they're all on the field? This was before the Mike Evans injury. Now we're at a situation where there's been discussions about playing more 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends, because of the fact that, you have a makeshift offensive line and now you're missing some of your star receivers. But as we know, Emeka Egbuka can be a physical wide receiver as well. I don't even think we've seen as much of that on display as what he can do in that area. And Chris Godwin is a very physical wide receiver as well. I'm not saying take away 12 personnel completely. I mean, let's face it, the tight ends aren't doing anything in the passing game. But I wouldn't mind some situations where the Bucs go 11 personnel, which is 3 wide receivers, maybe even go 4 wide receivers, but then you have 2 of your blockers as Emeka Egbuka and Chris Godwin Jr., because what you're doing is you're forcing the defense to play, with a nickel corner and have extra defensive backs. That leaves less defensive tackles, less linebackers, and you trust Chris Godwin Jr., certainly, and you believe that Emeka Egbuka can get the job done blocking these smaller defensive backs, which could open up running lanes for, Bucky Irving when he's healthy, for Rachaad White, Sean Tucker, Josh Williams, if he ever gets some opportunities. So you're not going to take Emeka Egbuka off the field, even when Mike Evans comes back and Chris Godwin Jr. gets better. He's just been that good. And it's one step, one milestone with NFL Rookie of the Month. Next up, Rookie of the Year.
Definitely. And the only real competition he'll have, from an offensive standpoint, would be Jackson Dart, if he keeps starting and winning games for the Giants. But when you look at this offense, Matt, and you're really hoping that the team can get to full health for as much as they can, because when you have all these pieces and you have so many options within the passing game, what that does for the running game, as you mentioned, it lightens up the box up front for someone like Bucky Irving, Rachaad White. There's so many weapons, not only in the wide receiver room, but also in the running back room. You're just hoping all the guys can return because, as you mentioned, and as you look at the injury report from yesterday, it's a rather extensive list of guys that didn't participate and are kind of trending in a iffy direction.
Yeah, it was brutal yesterday with the injury report. I'm going to pull it up real quick because it came out later because the Seahawks are on West Coast time, so they put the injury report out at the same time. But there were 9 players that did not participate in yesterday's practice. And granted, it was a walkthrough, so it's a little bit different. But those that didn't practice were Jamel Dean, Mike Evans, which was expected, Greg Gaines, Bucky Irving, Christian Izien, Baker Mayfield, Benjamin Morrison, who was on the screen there, Sterling Shepard, and Tyke Smith. There were 16 players total.
That's a third of the team.
Yeah, that included Levante David, Logan Hall, and Hassan Reddick. They were limited. Same with Tristan Wirfs. Chris Godwin Jr. was a full participation, along with Charlie Heck and Zion McCollum. So just absolutely egregious. And I'm not blaming the training staff. I know we can have that discussion if we want to. Of course, Super Chats, we will discuss that.
Oh, yeah.
But besides that, the good news is going into practice today, the corners were still out. That's not good news. Benjamin Morrison was still out. Jamel Dean still wasn't there. But Tyke Smith was able to practice. Tristan Wirfs was out there again. Chris Godwin Jr. was out there again. Baker was there too. Unfortunately, though, Bucky Irving was not out there. So that's the true big concern for this upcoming game is I'm not as worried about Bucky just because of the faith and confidence we've seen with Rachaad White and Sean Tucker. But to me, it's the secondary because Benjamin Morrison was so freaking good in the more playing time that he had last game. And Jamel Dean's been good despite of how people get mad at him. But, I mean, the Bucs can't go week in and week out with 16 players on the injury report. I mean, thank goodness they're not playing on Thursday Night Football until late in the season. I can't even imagine if the Bucs had to play tonight, which is actually a pretty good game with the 49ers and the Rams. And, of course, Bucs fans should be paying attention because they play both teams, including the 49ers, next week. But goodness gracious, 16 people on this list and key players being out. It's going to be difficult sledding for this team.
And looking at it from both perspectives, Matt, you look at the offense, like all of the stars are injured. Mike and Bucky, and then you have Chris and Tristan, who, while they're healthy, they're still getting into a rhythm. You wonder how close they are to 100%. And then you have Baker, who, while he was questionable last week, he played through it. He'll really play through anything. Like, all the offensive stars are banged up right now. And that makes it tough sledding when you look at how the Bucs are going to stay competitive on the road here at Lumen Field, which is one of the toughest environments for a team to play in the NFL. And you're going up against a Seahawks team, and specifically a Seahawks defense, only giving up 16.8 points per game. And then you also look at it from a defensive point of view. Two top corners like Jamel Dean and Benjamin Morrison have been off to great starts this year. And so you have Zion McCollum, who he hasn't really done much, but he's a really toolsy, athletic corner. You have him and maybe Jacob Parrish, who you're relying on these young players to step up. And the young players have done really good things, but there's only so much depth that the team would have. And missing 16 players or 16 players being injured in practice, that's not a great sign. And I know like injuries are a part of the game, but man, it's a really tough part of what the Bucs are doing right now.
And I don't know what the training staff is supposed to do. You know, one guy's got a quad injury. The other guy's got a ankle injury. Like when Bucky Irving gets tackled and a player lands on his ankle, how's that on the training staff? You know, what is he supposed to do in that situation? But sticking with the secondary, Adam, tell me your thoughts about this, because we spoke to George Edwards today, and he's like, yeah, it's pretty tough not knowing who's going to be ready for Sunday's game. And then he talked about just trying to find the best available 11 players to play on defense at one time. What is the best available? We don't have to say all 11, but in the secondary, what is the best option for this team in the secondary? And the reason why I have this picture of Jacob Parrish on there is because a lot of this, in my opinion, circles around him. Because Jacob Parrish, we talked about Benjamin Morrison getting some love. This guy deserves the most love. They took a great picture today with Bailey Adams.
Yes.
Posted on Pewter Report's Twitter account. That, I don't know. At some point, there'll be further context about that.
I think Scott posted it right before the show because I saw it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So for the little side tangent, for those that did not know, Scott and Bailey had a little mayor's bet going on between UCF, where Bailey went, and Kansas State, where I'm sure everyone knows by now because he always talks about it, that Scott went to. And with Kansas State beating UCF, Bailey had to rock a lot of Kansas State gear today at Bucs practice, and he took a picture with Jacob Parrish, and he took a picture with Josh Hayes as well. So it was all in good fun. But regardless, Jacob Parrish has been so good in the slot. He could be even better on the outside. The question is, because he's been so good in the slot, do you keep him there and move Kindle Vildor to the outside, who's been mostly a game day inactive? He played in week 2 when the Bucs were on the road against the Texans. You also have Bryce Hall on the practice squad. Or do you put Parrish to the outside, and then you could move Tyke Smith into the slot and have Kayvon Merriweather play strong safety? If you get Christian Izien back, Izzy could play in the slot position as well, which he's played throughout his career. What do you think is the best pairing for this group?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that like the Bucs defensive coaches are trying to figure out right now. I do want to put up this comment from HK Bucks because this is what I would agree with and what would be the answer, where you have Zion and Parrish playing outside, moving Tyke back to nickel, having Winfield and Merriweather at safety. I think that would be the best lineup in terms of just getting all the talent in positions to succeed. But the one argument, the one pushback I would have here is that the defensive continuity, like you talk about on the offensive side of the ball, that was a big theme throughout the offseason. You've seen this defense playing well with Parrish as a nickel, and even more so Tyke Smith as the strong safety, because nobody's really talking about it, but Tyke has been really good at safety. Like he's improved by leaps and bounds where he was last year. Todd Bowles had the chance to talk to him this week, and he was praising his instincts and just being able to kind of be that center fielder back there. So I think it's conflicting because you want to have all the guys out there playing in the spots where they're best. And I think Parrish is probably the best nickel. Smith is probably the best option at safety, but you also are matching up against Jackson Smith and the Jigba, Cooper Kupp, like really good wide receivers. So you want to make sure that you have two capable guys on the outside, because if it's not Parrish, it's not Bean, it's not Morrison, who is it? Bryce Hall, Kendall Vildor? Like, isn't exactly encouraging.
Vildor to me is a bit of a wild card because he did have a pretty good training camp, but as we've seen with some players, you could have a great training camp, but that doesn't always translate to what's going on in the NFL season, and he's mostly just played kind of special teams. I wouldn't hate an idea where maybe you kind of rotate the situation a little bit, like Kayvon Merriweather. I don't know how much you want him out on the field, but if it's a short yardage situation, 3rd and 2, maybe that's where you put him in and kind of stack him in the box and put Tyke in the slot. But then on other plays, you have Tyke back at strong safety, and maybe Parrish is in the slot, but then Bryce Hall is your outside corner for a little bit. And we have seen Todd Bowles do that. He's kind of wanted to get to that a little bit more this year, where you're not having one guy kind of stationed in one spot the whole time. I mean, there's a chance we see Zion McCollum in the slot for a little bit, depending on, what the matchup is. And in this case, going against Seattle and the Seahawks, who they do like to run the football a good amount. They have a pretty good 1-2 punch with their running backs too. Sam Darnold has been most successful throwing over the middle this year, which is a little scary for the Bucs because they haven't entirely solved their issues of allowing catches to the tight ends, allowing plays over the middle. Now, this defense is leaps and bounds better than what it was last year, and it's a credit to the secondary for not allowing those big plays that they did last year. But nonetheless, you're trying to cover every single base possible and limit the ways that the Seahawks can exploit a weakness. And I'm curious how Todd Bowles will go about it, because there's definitely a couple of different options. We can all just kind of guesstimate right now until we see it, in the game on Sunday.
And the one thing I'll add to what you said, Matt, I fully agree with you. When you kind of look at how did the banged up Bucs stay competitive, I would have more confidence in the Bucs defense going into this one than the offense, because we've talked about the offense and just being so banged up with injuries, so that you look at the defense and you're like, okay, the secondary's been the saving grace, but how are they going to be able to support the other side of the football? And so what I'll say is, you look at the kind of lack of takeaways by Tampa Bay, only 2 through 4 games, but Seattle has 7 interceptions through the first 4 games. I want to see the Bucs defense look more like that than a defense that only had 7 interceptions the whole of last year. So I think to really support the offense, and again, playing in a hostile environment, the defense is going to need to really step up and force a turnover or two to really kind of, shift the momentum.
They need to be starving for turnovers.
Hungry.
Need to be absolutely starving, because I'd almost rather the Bucs defense, maybe not specifically for this game, but for the whole season, I would rather them be a more opportunistic group than what we're seeing right now in terms of, I mean, if they play like they did against the Eagles in the second half, then,
no worries.
So be it. No problem at all. But I think some of the best defenses you'll find, yes, you want to put up zeros on the board as much as they possibly can. But I'd be okay with a bend but don't break type of defense for the Bucs, where sure, they'll allow some touchdowns here and there, but they're usually limiting teams to field goals. And nowadays you can hit field goals from 60 yards away. But in crucial moments with the game on the line, you're creating those turnovers. Like in week 3 against the Jets, the Jamel Dean pick 6 ended up being way more important than I think any of us imagined going into the fourth quarter, when he had that pick 6 right before halftime, just based on how the final score ended. So I'm fine if the Bucs get beat up in certain areas on the defensive side if they're taking the football away, because I still have enough belief in Tampa Bay's offense to still put up points on the board. And you know what? They might need a little bit of help with some extra snaps on the offensive side, but that'll be on the defense to make sure that they take the ball away. I want to see that guy on the screen right there.
Oh, yeah.
Ryan McCollum. Let's see him make a play. All right. Because he's got his hands on the football and then he keeps dropping them. No one's really stood out to be a ball hawk yet this season. I mean, who would have thought Jamel Dean would have the first pick this season? Where's Antoine Winfield Jr., who's had a good season, but where's he in terms of being an all-pro guy? Who's going to knock that ball out and recover a fumble? Who's going to take the football away? There's a great opportunity for everybody, but they got to show it on Sunday.
Yeah, well said. And when you look at like Seattle's secondary and what they've been able to do, Matt, it's so interesting because they're forming another Legion of Boom. They're doing it with guys that
yesterday on the show.
They're doing it with guys that are also under the radar yet again, like Richard Sherman back in the day. I think it was a 5th round pick. Baron Browner, Brandon Browner, he came out of nowhere to really have a solid career. And now you're seeing Darion Kendrick is PFF's highest graded corner. He has 2 interceptions. Josh Joby went from being a practice squad guy to a capable starter. They're doing all of this, Matt, also without Reek Wallen really looking like the playmaker he did, when the Bucs and Seahawks were playing in Germany. And then also Nick Amonwori, that second round, do it all uber athletic safety. He hasn't even seen the field since week 1 when he played 4 snaps. So on one side, you have a playmaking secondary that's doing everything they can with guys really off the street. And then Tampa Bay's secondary, yes, they've played good, but can they take it to the next level? Who is that X factor? And I think kind of going back to Jacob Parrish, at least this week, Matt, I think he is that X factor.
I would love for him to be the X factor on this group. He's the one, to me, that's been most aggressive in terms of he's trying to get in front of the football. Like, to me, watching Zion, and he's played really well, but Zion's been a little more reactive, where Jacob Parrish has been proactive. Like, a lot of times Zion isn't kind of like really getting his head around until the ball's in the air and he's kind of knocking it out of the hands of the receiver versus hitting the ball before it even touches the hands of the receiver, where Parrish, and either play is fine, but it's certainly more risky if the guy already has his hands on the football.
Right.
Parrish is jumping in front of things. He tackles like an absolute pit bull. He's in front of everything. And maybe that's just a little bit more of the nature of playing in the slot versus playing on the outside. But whatever happened, we see these players all the time in training camp, in practice when we're out there. They're working on tip drills. When was the last time the Bucs actually capitalized on a tip drill type of play? They had it.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, they could have had it in week 1 when the ball went off of Vita Vea's head and then Zion McCollum dropped it. It wasn't a tip drill to Levante David in week 2, but Levante dropped it. And that's actually crazy with the Seahawks, too. It's all these interceptions. It's not just in the secondary. Their linebacker has a couple of interceptions. They're getting it done everywhere, and that's just not Tampa Bay's MO right now. Another thing, as Bat W says, is they have to start fast, because to me, one of the biggest things you can do if you are a road team is score early and take the crowd out of it. That's essentially what the Eagles did against the Bucs, except there was a ton of Eagles fans. There's no better way to control a game than get an early lead and never let the crowd get into it. Seattle's known for the 12th man. They have a distinct advantage against any team that they play. And I'm not saying if the Bucs win the coin toss that they should say, we'll take the ball first instead of deferring. But if the Bucs, if they're on offense first, if they could score an opening drive touchdown, get rid of these sluggish starts that they've had. They've never had a lead in the first quarter when it finally hit zeros. They tied the Jets 3-3 in week 3. That's been about it. But if they can find a way to jump out to a 7-0 lead, whether it's an opening drive score for Tampa Bay or they get a stop, punt, take the ball the other way for a touchdown, it's big every week. But in this week too, when we're still not exactly sure how good this team is with all the injuries that have piled up for this group, I think it's more important than any of the games they played so far this season.
And I really like Bat W's comment on start fast, because I wrote my comments here in all my notes, fast start anyone in all caps, because it's something that Todd Bowles, Baker Mayfield, Josh Grizzard, they've all been placing so much emphasis into starting fast. And as you mentioned, for great reason, when you're going into this environment where there is going to be that 12th man, where the decibels are going to be above 100 and you're not going to be able to really hear what's going on, maybe even hear yourself think, being able to get off to that hot start, to kind of limit the crowd even just a little bit, and to also build momentum, because you've seen it. It seems like every single game, it's like a tale of two halves, where they spend the first half really adjusting to what the other team is doing, and then in the second half executing. It's like, no, you want to see in the first half, there also be some level of execution where the defense is able to not only stop the offense, also create some turnovers. And for the offense, really to put points on the board. Like, you don't want to rely on Chase McLaughlin making 65-yard field goals every week just to stay in football games. The offense has to go out there, score a touchdown. And Matt, I really want to see it happen on the first drive this week, because that's going to be how they stay in this one.
Yeah, I'm almost as concerned about the Bucs defense on that first drive as I am about the Bucs offense. And the Bucs offense certainly is not off the hook by any means. You know, they went 3-and-out twice against the Falcons in week 1. They were able to respond against the Texans in week 2, but they didn't look good last week against the Eagles in the first half. And while the Bucs are a very talented team, when you still don't have Mike Evans, Luke Gedeke, most likely looking like Bucky Irving in this game either, you can't go behind by 2 scores or whatever the case may be. But I'm worried about that defense, because the defense has allowed points in some capacity on every single first drive that they've been out there on the field. It happened in week 1. Bijan Robinson, bam, 3 minutes, and the Falcons are up. The Texans, who were struggling heavily in that first game of the season, go right down the field and score a touchdown. Jets had an early lead in that game, 3-0, and at least they improved in terms of they allowed a field goal versus a touchdown. And then you can't blame the defense for the blocked punt, but when the Eagles got that ball back again, bam,
they scored another one.
They went right down the field. Jalen Hurts is throwing underhanded passes and punching it into the end zone for Tampa Bay. So it's definitely been a collective effort with these slower starts between the offense and the defense, and really the special teams too.
And you're kind of seeing like the team, like they're punching back, but they're punching back so late. It's like, no, you're in the ring. You got to throw the first punch. And I think for the Bucs, that's the biggest step they can take. But when you look at, I'm reminded of baseball right now, because it's the playoffs, and you're heading up to Seattle. The Mariners are in it. The Bucs offense is going to have to do it with the bottom of the order, Matt. They're going to have Rashad White, Sterling Shepard, Cade Otton, and Sean Tucker, because the top of the order, outside of Emeka Egbuka, isn't in it, and Chris Godwin, he's just kind of like finding his footing. So I think the defense, as you mentioned, like they've gotten off to slow starts, but for them to really stay in this one, like they're not playing the Jets. They're not playing the 1-3 Texans. They're playing a 3-1 team this week, next week, and the week after.
Yeah, no, exactly. I am a little worried too, because I said it wasn't going to be an issue even if they lost to the Eagles if the game was close. And the game was close, but it was a blowout in that first half. There's going to be more and more people clamoring and chattering about the fact that they have beaten teams that combined have a horrible record. It was 1-8 going into this, or into last week. I think the Texans won, right? The Jets lost.
Yeah, I think it's 3-9 now.
Yeah, so it's 3-9. So it's a little bit better, but still not that much better. If the Bucs lose to Seattle, that noise is only going to get louder and louder when it comes to, is this a legit team or is it just kind of a pretender? And again, you still have the argument of, well, you don't have all of your top players, but I don't care. There's a lot of other teams that have just as bad of injuries. The 49ers, and we'll see what's up tonight, but the 49ers have won games, and granted, they went against the Saints and a couple of other bad teams, but they're winning without their top guys. I think if the Bucs want to show that they're a legit contender, they go out and beat the Seattle Seahawks. It's not going to look easy, but, you still have a top defense in there, and I want to see a better game from Yaya Diaby, too.
Yeah.
Because Yaya looked great 2 weeks ago, recording a sack, making some plays. And then he just disappeared again last game. And his angle of pursuit is so odd. Like, he goes so all or nothing. He goes inside. And then all of a sudden, there's no outside contain because Yaya Diaby took a risk and it didn't pay off. So I need Yaya Diaby to play more consistently this year. And, how about some more sacks from the outside? Because it's been a lot of Vita Vea, and that's huge. And hopefully he can continue to dominate. But I want to see the outside do something big in this game.
And I think consistency is a key word for Yaya Diaby, because after having probably one of the best, if not the best game of his career against the Jets, where he had 11 pressures, he looked fantastic. You mentioned he disappeared, and I don't want to say he had one of the worst showings, but it was far from the best. And I was like, is Yaya even on the field? So for Yaya to really take that next step in being a productive pass rusher, you also have to look at it. And Hassan Reddick, he might not be, if he plays, he might not be fully healthy because he's still recovering from that neck injury. So Yaya is all the more important. Even though Darnold doesn't move around, you still want to force him to get the ball out and into some hands of Tampa Bay defenders.
Darnold has scrambling ability. He's not going to run first, but we've seen plenty of quarterbacks escape the pocket for or going against the Bucs this upcoming season. So it's definitely something that Tampa Bay is going to have to hold down in this game and eliminate a lot of penalties as well. I think penalties have kind of crept up on this team as well. Before we go further into this podcast, now's a good time to remind everybody about Splash Sports. Make sure you download the app today. Start getting those quick picks in, whether it's for the Bucs game or tonight's Thursday night game between the 49ers and the Rams. Should be a great matchup. Join over 2.5 million people playing on Splash Sports, the home for Survivor, Pick'em, and Quick Picks. Whether you want to create your own contest with friends or take a shot at life-changing prize pools, which they have all the time, not just in week one, Splash Sports has you covered. They're also doing a weekend kickoff boost with Quick Picks. Boost up your Quick Picks entries this weekend by making at least 2 picks on your Quick Picks with the NFL games going on. Like I said, it can be tonight with the 49ers and the Rams. You could do it for the Bucs game or really any game of your choosing. I'd recommend the Bucs game, though, because I was perfect with my Bucs picks last game and won some money on those quick picks. You can turn $20 into $1,000 with the best multipliers in daily fantasy sports over on Splash Sports. Also, my team is still alive in the Splash Sports Pewter Report Survivor League. So for those that are still involved with that, still alive in that tournament, it's getting dicier because you pick some of the better teams. You can't use them again. But it's been a lot of fun over on Splash Sports. And you can download the app right now with the QR code right there on the screen. There is another big topic that went on today, and it's been an ongoing topic this entire week. And it's the blocked punt, the block kick situation. So we spoke to Thomas McGahee today, and we got him a couple of weeks ago, I believe on a Friday. It was after, I want to say Atlanta. It was after that. So it was all like, hey, these special teams are amazing. Cameron Johnson, wow. Riley Dixon, wow.
Wow.
Now, it has gone completely in the different direction. Cameron Johnson's still doing his thing, and that's great for Tampa Bay. But we are on a streak now of 3 games in a row where there's been a block of some sort. Week 2, the punt got blocked against the Texans. It eventually gave them a lead. Week 3, Bucs went down by a point when Will McDonald of the Jets leapt over Elijah Klein, blocked the kick by Chase McLaughlin, and took it to the house. Ultimately, the Bucs came back and won, though, which was important. And then to start last game, Riley Dixon gets his punt blocked. The Eagles take it to the house, and it just started a house of horrors for Tampa Bay in that first half. So we got to speak to Thomas McGahee, the special teams coach, today. And it was interesting because this happens every now and then, but it doesn't happen too much. But we got it twice today when George Edwards spoke. Before he fielded questions, he came up and gave a speech about the preparation for the game. That was a little more surprising. McGahee comes up and he goes on a 2-minute long conversation about how it's simple things that they're messing up. They know they have to fix it. They are fixing it. It's a simple blocking scheme that's going on. And he said, believe me, nobody is more frustrated than I am. It sounds like there's going to be some personnel changes based on everything that Thomas McGahee was saying. He thinks it's more of the poor blocking than it is anything with the windup, if you will, of Riley Dixon. He said Riley Dixon actually, if you compare it to other punters, is completely fine with his overall, wind up and get up. He pretty much alluded to it's a lot of the blocking issues that's gone on with this team. They've looked at it. They've looked at different things that they need to correct. And he also acknowledged, too, that other teams, he said it's like chum in the water. When you see one blocked punt, every team's going to look at it and see how you go about it. Obviously, the Eagles did that and blocked the punt. So he said they're correcting it, they're getting it fixed, and it will be fixed. Now, whether or not we believe him, I think is the bigger question. But good on Thomas McGahee to at least take some accountability with the issues that has come about with Tampa Bay this last game.
Yeah, there has been a lot of issues, and it was great of McGahee to come out and kind of talk about them. But Riley Dixon also, he didn't hold a press conference, but he took, questions from a few reporters. And I had the chance to speak to him, and he kind of talked about what his mindset is right now. And for him, it's not changing. Like, he knows that he has to do his job. He told me that every day punting is the same. Every day punting, it's different. There's new challenges, and you never really figure it out. Otherwise, punters would be playing until they're 50. And that's what he said. But right now for him, he's a veteran and he's staying process oriented. You can only do so much to control the results, is what he told me. So right now for him, like you mentioned, the windup, it's not so much, it's a little bit of a corrective issue, right? But there's only so much you can do. You take the ball, you punt the ball. And for him right now, I think the blocking could be a little bit better. I think he could be a little bit better. He's also shanked a couple of punts. But overall, Todd Bowles, he was assessing the special teams unit, the operation after the Eagles game. And I think right now, I don't know if there's going to be personnel changes before this game, but if something goes awry, I would expect a lot of changes coming up.
Yeah, I had asked Coach McGahee about that today, too, if there are going to be any personnel changes. And obviously not like a new punter, because they tried out punters. They didn't sign anyone, so Riley Dixon has to be the guy. But there's different things you can do. You could have different interior guys next to Evan Deckers, the long snapper. You could have a different guy in the backfield as well, where typically it's Ryan Miller, but it could be somebody else. And McGahee said that they've looked into it, so it certainly might be something that changes. But at this point, I don't know if I believe that they're going to correct and fix some of the issues, because Bowles said, we have solutions. We have solutions. And I'm not saying he's going to be up there and be like, okay, we're actually going to do this, this, and that. But I don't know. Seeing is believing, and I just kind of don't believe that the Bucs are going to necessarily get it done. And I'm not necessarily saying that every time they snap it back, the punt is going to be blocked. But the Bucs are at a point right now, they can't even allow punts to get, or kicks getting close to getting blocked. Yeah. Because at that point, then everybody's just going to pin their ears back every single time. And sooner rather than later, another one is going to get blocked. And then the last thing, too, is for those saying that, fire Thomas McGahee, fire this guy, fire that guy. You can't fire this early in the season, especially a special teams coach.
Right.
Who's chilling on the side? Who's chilling on the streets right now that's going to come in and then just bring in a whole new system, a whole new philosophy that's going to take a lot of time to install? The Bucs spent May, June, July, August with this system in place. You're not just going to put in a new system in 1 week and say, all right, let's use this against the San Francisco 49ers. So I understand people's frustrations with it, but there's not an exact one-to-one solution of how to, get it better with the special teams problem.
And especially because you've kind of seen an uptick in blocked field goals and punts all across the league. So it isn't really just a Bucs issue right now. And the other thing I'll mention with McGahee is you want to trust a special teams coordinator, who's been in that role for a few seasons now. If anyone knows how to correct the ship, it's going to be him.
I think another thing that's so fascinating right now, and this is all the NFL, not even the Buccaneers, but one thing that's so interesting to me is all of these kickers now they can hit from like 60 yards with
Yeah.
these. And it almost reminds me of, for those that are like golf fans, back in the day, players could drive the ball, but they wouldn't hit it insanely far. And then Tiger Woods came along, and he just mastered demolishing the golf ball to where he doesn't have to have that far of a second shot. Now, he still had all this great finesse, and if he was further out, he could hit all the shots too. That's why he's the greatest golfer ever. But
Yep.
now, in today's day and age, there's new technology in golf. Players have gotten bigger, faster, stronger. So they had to extend how far the hole is, how far back the tee box is, because now with all the new technology and faster people and stronger people, everyone can kind of just bomb the ball off the tee and get it closer to the hole. So they had to make it more challenging. We're kind of seeing that in football now with field goals. First of all, the new kickoff rule, you can get the ball at the 35. You're a 15-yard pass away from being in field goal range, which is kind of incredible. So I don't know what the overall answer is. It's good that there's like more scoring, but at the same time, I feel like you got to earn it a little bit. I don't know what the solution is. You're not going to move the end zones further back because you want to fill all the fans in the stands. But I don't know if eventually we'll see maybe the field goal post like being a little closer in, like width-wise versus where they are now. But I don't know. What do you think about it?
You make a great point, and it's something I haven't really thought of until you like brought it up. But the special teams across the NFL, Matt, and like so many different areas, is evolving at a rate I think faster than a lot of teams are able to adapt to. Because you mentioned like the block kicks and punts, kickers being able to make 65-yarders consistently, and I don't know what the solution would be in terms of that. You know, the NFL back in the day, they used to have the uprights really close at the front of the end zone.
Yeah,
and
right.
so maybe they try pushing them back a little bit further, but it's interesting and it makes it more entertaining because, you know, like scoring is up across the league. But I look at the Bucs right now and I think like if this team were at full strength, you don't want special teams to be the detriment, because I go back to the Chargers back in the day. They had the number one scoring offense, the number one defense, but they had the 32nd ranked special teams, and they didn't make the playoffs that year. So special teams, that's what really separates the good teams from the great teams. And I think right now the Bucs are a really good team, but it's just how much better can they get with all these issues plaguing them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They can't let special teams get in their way because they're too good of a team. And when you have a great returner like Cameron Johnson, I mean,
Yeah.
now he's a weapon for this group. Like he sets them up with good field position. I think twice this year he's provided or tried to at least provide a spark for this team. The first one was week 1 against Atlanta, which eventually led to a touchdown. The second one was last week against the Eagles. And I think the Bucs eventually on that, he had a great return. Eventually, the Bucs got stopped on 4th down, but they were able to score on the next drive. But Cameron Johnson's been exceptional in his role.
Yeah, 6 returns for 100 yards. And really, for someone who made the team primarily just because of his special teams ability, he's lived up to that and then some. And you mentioned just providing a spark, and what he did in the last game to really give the offense a fighting chance, get him in plus scoring position to where they can kind of do something. He hasn't made much of an impact offensively, but for Johnson, like it's a good story because last year, you know, he battled a lot of injuries heading in, even into the training camp this year. He was going through it, but he's come out on the other side. And I talked to him in the locker room this week, and he's just angry when he gets the ball. Like he gets the ball, he sees a couple key blocks ahead of him, and he's gone. He's going to be fighting, and he's just like a little stick of dynamite. We thought it would be Tej Johnson. Nope.
Yeah.
Turns out it's Cameron Johnson, the other one, and he's more than done his part to really keep this team in games.
Absolutely has. And there's a couple of returners where I'm watching them and I'm like, okay, if he makes the first guy miss, he's going to be off to the races. Cameron Johnson is now in that category to me. If he makes the first 1 or 2 guys miss, we're talking about the Bucs starting with the ball around midfield or maybe even reaching the end zone. So he's been a spectacle to watch in this new role. Remember, he did win Special Teams Player of the Week in week 1. So I don't think it'll be the last that we see him getting one of those weekly awards. But we got to talk about something very important, and that is making sure your home is good to go, especially at this time of the year when it's hurricane season. It was almost a year ago when the Hurricanes came to Tampa last year. The first hurricane, I think, happened about a week ago last year. And then the next hurricane that hit when the Bucs had to go to New Orleans, they were playing the Saints, but they had to go earlier and practice at Tulane because of the hurricane. That was all. I think that'll be a year ago starting next week. But you want to make sure you have everything set and good to go when it comes to your home insurance and all of your different types of insurances as well. And of course, there's nobody better in the business to work with than the great people over at Brier Grieves Insurance. You've heard Scott Reynolds talk about it before, about how important Brier Grieves Insurance is. And also Jason Light uses Brier Grieves Insurance. So you want to make sure you definitely give them a call. As we know, the hurricanes that have hit this area in Tampa Bay before, they can be devastating. So you want to make sure that you have the right people and insurance in place. And that's where Brier Grieves Insurance comes in, because they are family owned and their main goal is helping people. They want to help people find the right insurance policy for you and your family. So whether it's home or auto, boating insurance, or business insurance, you can turn to Brier Grieves and find out why their personal touch and customer service sets them apart. You want to be waiting on hold to speak with an insurance representative that you don't know them. They don't really know you. They're just trying to, get some answers and all that type of stuff. That's not what Brier Grieves Insurance does. With Brier Grieves, you're going to have a relationship with your agent who can answer your questions and advise you on all the best policies around. Brier Grieves can help make sure you have the right hurricane and flood insurance to make sure you and your home are protected. So visit BrierGrievesInsurance.com today. That's Brier, B-R-I-E-R, Grieves, G-R-I-E-V-E-S, or call their office today at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166, and tell them that Pewter Report sent you. Also, some other notes for everybody. We're not done just yet. You're going to have a Pewter Insider coming up tomorrow for Pewter Platinum and Premier members. That'll be at 1:30. So we'll have the latest information on who's playing, who's available, and who's out for that Bucs game against Seattle. That's at 1:30. We'll talk about how will the Bucs deal with their injuries. And we'll answer all questions, comments, concerns, all that good stuff. And then on the day of the game, on Sunday, for Bucs Seahawks, we'll start with the Pewter pregame show. That's October 5th at 9 a.m. Myself and Scott going through some of the best matchups and biggest storylines for said game. And then at 4:05, it's staying at 4:05, according to Todd Bowles. It'll be the Pewter Game Day show. Myself and Daniel Morales chatting about the game, giving play-by-play, some reactions, analysis. We keep it super interactive with everybody in the chats, in the comments as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And then, of course, after the game, we'll have the Pewter post-game show. Hopefully, we are talking about a Tampa Bay Buccaneers win. That'll be around anywhere from 7:30 to 7:45, depending on when we hear from Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield. So we have that coming out as well, along with some other content taking place on Pewter Report's YouTube channel, Pewter Report TV. Also, now's a good time to give a thank you to all of our Pewter Platinum members, starting with Scott Federico, Rachel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Hezo813, Ash Fishpool, Joel L. Rican, Sam, John Dale Morris, Zap Brannigan, RP89, Connor For Reals, Kevin Thomas, Leighton Carter, Brandon Riley, Alec Bickler, Nick Dubuque, Zach Jarvis, Mario Thomas, Eric McMillan, Dominic Tarantino, HK Bucks, Brayon Pinkney, The Real Maverick, and The Guy is Gifted. We appreciate
Thank you, everyone.
one of you for your support, and we look forward to the Pewter Insider on tomorrow's show. Adam, is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that we need to get to?
Yes, there is. So we've talked a lot about the special teams and what Thomas McGahee had to say, but Josh Grizzard also talked today. He
He
had
did.
a 9-minute press conference, and there's something I want to get into a little bit deeper, and that's what he said on placing emphasis on pushing the ball downfield. And
Yeah.
he was kind of discussing Baker Mayfield's completion percentage. It isn't where it was last year. Last year, he had a franchise record 71.4% completion percentage. Right now, it's sitting in the 50s, guys. It's at 59.7%. So that is a stark decrease. And there's a lot of statistics that kind of point to where he's been inefficient. But I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about that. Matt, what are your takeaways on what Josh had to say?
I think it makes sense of what's going on. You said we're taking deeper shots and we're just not hitting them, and we got to execute on them. I think a bigger takeaway is not even necessarily what Grizzard said, but what he wants to happen. I almost feel like you can't take as many of these deep shots with kind of the makeshift group that they have on the offensive side because, and I think the offensive line really had some growing pains last week, even though everybody was in their natural positions. They went 3 weeks beforehand of not playing in those natural positions. So I think that could change this week or in the future weeks. I think establishing more of a rhythm and a tempo to me is more important right now than what Grizzard wants to do with going deep. Now, for those that'll say, "Well, what about the touchdown to Egbuka and the touchdown to Bucky?" If you go back and watch those plays, and Emeka Egbuka even said it today, it was a scramble drill with the touchdown to Emeka Egbuka. It wasn't like it wasn't like that was a design type of play. Emeka Egbuka wasn't even the target on that play. He was like the second or third option, but Baker was able to extend the play. Then Egbuka started going deep, and that's when he threw it to him. Bucky Irving on his 72-yard touchdown, it was an awesome play. That was, again, Baker rolling out to the pocket. Bucky only ran like a 5 to 7 yard route. And then once he saw Baker running, he started going deep down the field. And that's when Baker chucked it deep. Those plays almost remind me of the big play last year against the Chargers when Mike Evans had that big catch and run.
Yep.
Baker was about to scramble, and then he chucked it, and Mike caught it and took it the rest of the way. I'm fine with Grizzard's philosophy. And what he said made sense about like why Baker's completion percentage isn't up that high. I just think right now, for the betterment of the team, it makes more sense to just get the whole offense involved, get a rhythm going versus, hey, let's take a deep shot. Because if you're not getting the deep shots, well, that's when the Bucs have gotten into trouble of 3 and outs or 1 first down, and then that's about it. And they're not running the football the way that they have been last season, at least not just yet. So I'm fine with the deep shots overall. I think in time they will come. I just don't know, even for this game against Seattle, if that's necessarily the best way to go about.
And when it comes with the deep shots, Matt, like you make a great point, but there's also like the other side of the token where you don't always want to dink and dunk down the field.
Yeah.
But you also do want to take those deep shots because if they just rely on those short, intermediate, like efficient passes, the defense is going to play up. They're going to play in the box, and that's really going to like stuff the run game too. So when you kind of look at Baker's statistics so far, Josh Grizzard has done more than his part to get the ball down the field. Mayfield has gone from attempting 8.8% of his passes, more than 20 yards, to 17.3%. And you look at his adjusted completion percentage on those throws, it's at 37.5%. That's down from 44% last year. So that's kind of what Grizzard was saying on just not being able to execute them right now. But across the field, Mayfield's completion percentages are down. When you look at from 10 to 19 yards, it's at 41%. Adjusting that based on wide receiver drops, it's at 51.7. But last year, Matt, it was at 67.8%. You saw the ways that Liam Cohen was able to scheme up the offense and getting those wide receivers open. And it was Godwin really got off to a hot start after he went down. I mean, Mike Evans and what he did in the second half, like a lot of guys were making plays. And right now, Mayfield and just his accuracy, it's not quite there. But at the same time, the wide receiver separation, that's also down a little bit. And you saw Emeka Egbuka last week against the Eagles. Like he was locked up by Quinyon Mitchell. And you can make the case, more than make the case that, Mitchell was holding here and there. But But Emeka Egbuka has to get open. Chris Godwin has to get open. And Mayfield needs to hit him with accuracy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, the Eagles had a ton of tight coverage against all the receivers last week. And Egbuka, you take out the big play by him, and it's more of a very pedestrian game, but you can't take it out. And it was an awesome play. I would never want to take it out. The bottom line is the two things you just said. The receivers need to create more separation. And I think that will come again with a better, healthier Chris Godwin Jr. And Baker needs to make those throws. And I also think this is a situation where you miss Jalen McMillan a lot more too. Because
Yes.
Mike is always, you miss Mike Evans, of course. Duh, everyone knows that. But Mike is always going to get that attention. Chris Godwin's been a little bit more of the underneath guy, and we're still kind of figuring out what Egbuka is going to be in this offense. He's great in this offense. It's just, is he going to be more of a downfield guy, underneath guy, all that different stuff? Jalen McMillan, we know, is the deep shot type of guy. We saw that when you and I were in Pittsburgh for the joint practice.
Oh, yeah.
McMillan was making big plays down the field. A lot of his touchdowns were big throws down the field as well. And McMillan can get that when he has these one-on-one opportunities because all the attention is on these other guys. So I think that's another part of it too, is McMillan was the big play guy when it isn't Mike Evans being a superhero and a great player that he is. So I think that plays into it as well. Want to get to this comment from Utah Bucknut, who says, that's what scares me about the Bucs. We need more over the middle and screens than mix in the edge and deep stuff. I like to see a little more screens this week, whether it's wide receiver or running back. It seems like, for whatever reason, they like to run screens with Rachaad White more than Bucky. So that might be something that we see more of on Sunday in this game.
And another element, and you pointed to Pittsburgh, I also want to mention Sean Tucker in the joint practice that they had. He had back-to-back screens on the right sideline where he caught the ball and he's gone. Like, his acceleration is second to none. And I think it's really disappointing, to me at least, that he only has one carry through 4 games, because he's like the secret weapon. Like, you know that the Bucs have a stockpile, but he's like the one that they're working on in the lab, and they're kind of showing you blueprints here and there. Like, it tests really well against the Saints. You know, he wins NFC Offensive Player of the Week, but then he goes back into hiding. And I think right now the offense could use all the firepower it has. And Rachaad White and Sean Tucker, I really want to see them complement and play off each other, but also Josh Grizzard really scheming and tailoring the offense to give them touches, because they have to control the time of possession. That's another thing we've pointed to in weeks past, where you're up in Seattle, you want to hold the ball as long as possible and not give them a chance, because they have a set of weapons too.
Time of possession will be very important in this game. I also want to see more of Sean Tucker. I wouldn't mind to see some more pony package, even without Bucky Irving. You know, keep Sean Tucker in that backfield. Maybe let Rachaad White line up, out wide, or even just run a route out of the backfield as well. One thing that isn't disappointing, though, is watching a game over at Walk-Ons, and you have a great opportunity to do so this weekend with the Bucs on the road in Seattle. There's tons of TVs. They'll have all the football games on. And then, of course, the Bucs game at 4:05 when they are playing. There are 3 walk-ons in the Tampa Bay area over at Wesley Chapel, Midtown Tampa, and Lakeland. The Midtown location's like 5 minutes away from Raymond James Stadium. So try some of their kickoff cocktails, the Walk-Ons Whiskey Sours, the Players Punch, and the Strawberry Mule. They have some winning shots as well, and their food, their appetizers are fantastic. They have happy hour all of the time. So check out Walk-Ons, score big flavors and even bigger vibes over at Walk-Ons. Man, this should be a fun game coming up on Sunday. 2 3-1 teams, playoff contenders. We know the Bucs are. Looks like Seattle is now with Sam Darnold. Any matchup in particular, Adam, that you're going to be watching?
Not necessarily. Like, the first thing that comes to mind for me, Matt, is the matchups like on both sides of the ball and who's going to do better. Like the whole Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold storyline, I'm here for it. Jackson Smith-Njigba, what he's done in the NFL versus like Emeka Egbuka, you know, him just kind of being that budding superstar, winning NFC Offensive Rookie of the Month. And so those are the matchups that I want to see the Bucs really come out on top on, because you want the star players to do well. But I'm also going to keep an eye on like you asked me which matchups, how Egbuka fares up against these Seattle defensive backs, because it isn't just one guy, it's been a collective effort. But I would say Devon Witherspoon, he's going to be the one matched up against him the most. How's he going to do?
And also, it's going to be a very aesthetically pleasing game because the Bucs will be back in their 1976 throwback uniforms, and the Seahawks are also celebrating their 50th year of their organization, so they will be wearing their light blue jerseys with gray helmets, and the Bucs will have their Bucco Bruce helmets and the 1976 throwback uniform. So very much looking forward to watching this game. Again, we got the Pewter Insider tomorrow, the pregame show at 9 a.m., and the game day show coming up at 4:05 on Sunday afternoon for Bucs vs. Seahawks, plus the postgame podcast not long after the game. If you guys aren't already doing so, please make sure you're following us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report. And our YouTube channel is PewterReportTV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Tell us what you think is going to happen in the game. Give us a prediction. We'll have our predictions out tomorrow on Friday, probably around noonish or around then. But we'll have our predictions for tomorrow's game. And I have a feeling not everyone's going to be on the same side, which is good because we've kind of picked the same team each week, but we've been right each week. But anyway, that's going to do it for us. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. For Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you soon for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.